Hi, I'm Britt,
And my name is Alyssa.
and this is Skeletales.
And this is the podcast that strives to answer the age-old question of, is my dead grandma watching me?
We also share true tales of the strange, unusual, and paranormal.
Heck yeah, we
Alyssa,
do.
What are we talking about today?
I think we're talking about haunted schools. Ghouls in schools. School ghouls.
Boys and ghouls.
Yes.
Ghouls.
Ghouls.
School.
Would you-
Boys and ghouls.
Oh, boys and... I thought you said blazing ghouls. And I was like, yes, and
sure.
what?
And you're in nincompoop. Were you inspired by this theme from the story I told last week about the ghost moving the M&Ms and then somebody finding what they thought was a poo smudge on the camera lens and it turned out to be a mushed M&M on the lens?
No, not at all. I didn't even
Oh, really?
think about that. No.
I thought this inspired it.
No, I was just thinking, well, I was floated the idea of doing stories from the Philippines, or then just for whatever reason, haunted schools sounds creepy and fun. And so that popped in my head. So it was literally just the miniest of brainstorms, and that's what came out. But no, I forgot about that.
I'm all on board, though. I've got a good one. Do you have any good stories?
I think so. I have. Am I going to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a local one to me in Seattle. I'm going to tell you about the Martha Washington Park and the School for Girls. I've also seen this as the Martha Washington School for Insane Girls.
Ooh.
So Martha Washington Park is a quaint park on the Lake Washington shore. It's a nice place to have a picnic, go for a jog, or take your dog on a walk. The trees offer a lovely shade as the cool breeze from the lake washes over your skin. But once the sun sets on Martha Washington Park, it's time to go. The park is one of the most haunted places in Seattle, and it gets really spooky after nightfall. The park was home to the infamous Martha Washington School for Girls, where young women who were considered delinquent were sent to continue their studies. Like any other insane asylum in the 20th century, the patients or students of Martha Washington were likely subject to cruel and unusual experiments and punishments. There have been tales at the school involving allegations of murder, suicide, rape, and violence. After the school was shut down in the 1980s, it was abandoned, attracting vagrants, vandals, and satanic cults who used the space to perform their bloody rituals. The abandoned school was demolished in 1989, and the area was transformed into Martha Washington Park. People who straddle into the park at night report. Is that a verb? People who straddle into the park?
Like, straggle, maybe?
I don't know.
You straddle a horse.
Yeah, I don't know. People who straddle, maybe it only happens if you straddle into the park. So if you're not straddling into the park, you're safe.
Okay.
So they report phantom footsteps, disembodied voices, and the apparitions of young girls spying them from behind the trees or bushes. Adults who have abused young girls often receive the most intense haunts, while teenage girls are often comforted by the spirits in the park. Interestingly enough, long before the School for Girls was erected, the indigenous Duwamish tribe used the area to fish, play games, and bury their dead. The construction damaged the remains of the deceased, stirring up their spirits. Some of the ghosts at the park are native in origin. Some say the bad energy that lingered over the school was due to the anger from the native spirits after their resting place was desecrated. So it was built back in like the early 1900s, and it was a mansion that a fella had built for himself with a boathouse and a conservatory. And so it was a really cool kind of space architecturally and everything. But while they were building it, apparently, there was a gravesite that they just tossed the bones aside and just paid no attention. Don't mind those bodies while building it.
That won't make you immediately cursed.
Right? I wonder why the guy sold it to this insane school for girls, right? This beautiful mansion he built. So long before the European colonizers arrived in Seattle, the Duwamish inhabited the lands. They often camped on shore and fished along Lake Washington, including the area now known as Martha Washington Park. The area was used for fishing, playing games, and was also used as a burial site. After the Europeans moved in, they had little regard for the land. Construction shuffled the bones around, damaging the human remains. According to mediums in the area, the spirits are angry at the destruction of their burial site. They attribute the dark aura at Martha Washington School for Girls to stem from the angry spirits of the Duwamish. So the School for Girls was initially located in Queen Anne, which is a neighborhood in Seattle. You can see like the Space Needle from there. And it was called the Parental School for Boys and Girls. So the institution was co-ed at the time. The faculty quickly realized the problems that arose when housing troubled boys and girls in the same building. So they separated the two. It was Everett T. Smith who sold his property on Lake Washington in 1920 to the Seattle School District, who then used the building to house the girls' school. So it was a Seattle school district building. It wasn't a private institution necessarily. It never had very many girls. It was like 30 to 80 girls, and they were aged from 10 to 16. They were educated in traditional housekeeping activities like cooking, cleaning, laundry, and gardening. And many of the trees that now populate Martha Washington Park were planted by the students at the girls' schools.
And so these were troubled girls.
Troubled youths. Yeah,
okay.
Like I read something that it was very old-timey. It was like, well, if you just give them something to do with their hands and occupy their hands and the mind with some domestic chores like cooking, cleaning, their lives get turned right around. Things that they've never seen demonstrated in their lives before. It's amazing the transformation that could occur. Like, that's all they needed. Some good old discipline, pretty much.
Good old shoving them into the female role.
Yeah.
Cooking and cleaning and planting
that'll
trees.
set them right. Yeah. So rumors swirled about all sorts of horrifying acts at the girls' school. Murder, rape, violence, and suicide were all said to have taken place at the school. There were even allegations of human experimentation. Many of these tales remain unconfirmed due to the lack of any formal records. The girls at Martha Washington were considered to be the bad kids, quote unquote. And so they were sent to the girls' school because they couldn't fit in anywhere else. And they were regarded as subjects of the state of Washington. And the way they were treated had parallels with patients at mental institutions. And many of these instances were likely covered up or simply unreported. Since society had already deemed these children troublemakers, abusive adults likely took advantage of them, knowing they could get away with it. Some stories do survive, though. A janitor reportedly raped and murdered one of the students at the girls' school, and her body was found hung from a tree the next day. So there's also another version of that story that the janitor went nuts and killed many people from the school. They threw their bodies in Lake Washington and down an old well. There's also a story that they sent their bodies were thrown into a boiler. I don't know if it's apocryphal. I don't, did this really happen, or is this something that was rooted in real events? There may have been a real asshole of a person who worked there. There's also rumors it could have been the caretaker. So just as time, urban legends go, they kind of change over time. So the Martha Washington School for Girls remained open until 1965. The building was used for other educational purposes until 1983. The building was abandoned shortly afterwards. It became a haven for vagrants, graffiti artists, and drug addicts. The building also attracted satanic cults who used the building for their dark rituals. The Satanists gained quite some notoriety in the neighborhood, and the residents of Brighton Beach weren't exactly thrilled at the idea of animal sacrifices taking place near their home. They petitioned to have the buildings demolished. The city listened, and the buildings were knocked down in 1989, which is a shame because it was very pretty. And actually, now you can still see the arch of the entrance of the building in Green Lake Park. Why they didn't put it in the park that they built on the grounds, no clue.
Because it's haunted.
I guess, yeah. They shipped it across the city to make it a little more haunted over there, too. So few remnants of the building remains, like the hollow staircase leading to the madrona trees. The madrona trees are supposed to be the tree that the person was hung in. And some people say that that is a portal to the past. So if you walk down the stairs, you go on a time travel trip. I kind of want to try that. We should do a field trip.
You're not far from it.
Yeah, if I don't come back, it's because I'm now imprisoned in the Martha Washington Yeah, school for girls. And then you go look at historic pictures of the schools, and then there's Alyssa in the pictures. I did find a picture of the school and the girls in the schoolyard, and they're all like hunched over weirdly. Like, I don't know if they're practicing bows. It's a creepy picture, but probably just a picture that was taken candidly and is not of anything in particularly creepy. It's just the way that it captured, because they're all kind of looking down and look like they're sulking in these like gowns and little page boy haircuts from back in the day.
I'll have to post a picture in the show notes.
Yeah, I will. And I downloaded a couple too, because I found them for you. So some of the students of Martha Washington haven't left. They still roam the grounds of their own old schools. They tend to hide amongst the vegetation, making themselves known only to certain passerbyers. The apparition of a translucent young girl in a nightgown is the one that's the most seen. She is said to walk along with those who are taking a stroll. Sometimes she's noticed, sometimes she isn't. She's given quite a few people a good scare and has sent packs of people running out of the park. She's more likely to appear when there's an odd number of people in the group. After dark, those who go to Martha Washington have reported phantom footsteps, disembodied voices, blood-curdling screams in the distance, and the feeling of being watched or followed. Many also claim to feel a strong sense of uneasiness if they're in the park during sunset. They also have been known to see a Native American in a traditional headdress, and their spirit is present strongest near the water and around the caretaker's house. Some speculate that the tribes used that particular location to clean and butcher their game or even kill prisoners of war. According to local mediums, the indigenous spirits have a force field around the area, presumably to ward off or close in a much more evil spirit, perhaps an evil energy created by the horrible events at the girls' school, or even raised from hell by a satanic cult. So then also, according to Ghost City Tours, like they frame it as there were murders and suicide of staff and students. Bodies were dumped in the well, the lake, and the boiler burn box. A madrone tree on the property was used for hangings. The remaining haunted archway sits in Green Lake Park, and Satanists use the former school building for rituals. There's disembodied sobbing and other sounds of young women echo across the property. Rows of floating balls of light and gusts of wind from nowhere frequently seen and felt at night. And during the day, you may even get pushed into the lake by the ghost of the caretaker if he decides he doesn't like you. Apparently there's also spirits showing up in photographs. I didn't find any of that. And that is pretty much the whole story of the Martha Washington School for Insane Girls who still haunt this park on the lake, the banks of Lake Washington.
Just a wealth of activity. Like you've got Native American activity, you've got the poor, insane girls activity, you've got caretakers shoving people in water, you've got the Satanists apparently got their hand in the mix too.
I think I believe that one the most. Not even that I'm sure that there was some unsavory things happening at the school. I agree with that. But for sure, I think the well-documented things is that Satanists took over and were just, doing their Satanist things, and the neighbors hated it. And they're like, tear it down.
From now on for the rest of my life, thanks to our interview with Courtney and Lizzie from Through the Veil shop, I will always think of Satanists as just peace-loving vegans now.
Right? I know. That's what I was thinking. They're actually like nice
sitting
people.
in a circle, roasting their vegan hot dogs and talking about the weather.
And that's what they're doing inside with like their bonfire and their pentagrams. They just build their little vegan, potluck. We're like, where are we going to have our potlucks now?
Well, let's do it in the park.
I know. So I can go here. Like I was just looking for haunted schools, and it was like one of the top haunted locations in all of the United States. And I was like, oh, that's around the corner from me. A kid did get shot and killed. A ghost hunter went there to investigate. and just a few years ago, and he was actually the victim of just a random act of violence while he was out there ghost hunting and got shot by somebody. So I will not be going down there after dark.
Oh man, you know that ghost hunter is haunting the shit out of that park too.
Maybe you thought they were ghosts. They're like, oh shit, they're ghosts. And then the ghosts fired. That's not funny. Okay.
Well, there is that story from the UK, not related to schools at all, but they're in this village. There is this ghost that kept appearing night after night. And one of the townspeople was like, I'm going to capture this ghost. I'm going to get this ghost. And so he's out with his rifle going ghost hunting, and there's a local townsman painter in white garb, because that's what painters wear, who'd been at the pub earlier, kind of drunk. And so painter's walking home. This ghost hunter, literally hunting ghosts, sees the man in white, says, "Ghost, stop there. Stop, I tell you." The man, the painter, is walking home. The guy shoots the painter. What? Thinks he's a ghost. Thinks he's shot himself a ghost. Turns out is just another human.
How, like, okay, why are you trying to shoot a ghost? I'm pretty sure that's not going to work. Like, one thing I think we all know about ghosts is, one, they're already dead. Two, they can like walk through walls. Like, this is a very agreed upon
a ghost
trope. Like, you can't shoot a ghost, guys. You can't. Don't try. Don't do it.
I'm not saying that's what happened to this poor child in 2018, but...
Yeah, no, it sounds like they just ran into some ruffians and tragedy struck. But yeah, sad, tragic. I want to go... Do I want a little girl, a transparent little girl to walk with me?
Hold your hand, sob in your ear, shove you in the lake.
But we have to go in threes. So you and me can't go together. We need one other person.
Okay.
We need a three, so because they like to be
Odin.
Yeah, I wonder if they had the buddy system there too. Like, everyone had to walk in pairs or something, or where that's
they don't like the odd numbers.
Yeah, I don't like odd numbers. Well, or I love odd numbers. It really depends on the situation. Okay. Do you have a story, Britt?
I do. I have one from Kim. Kim starts off just saying, hey, Google the University of North Alabama ghosts, and you will not be disappointed. The 4 main stories that can be backed up with facts are these. Story number 1, the off-campus bookstore. This is in a small old building just across the street from the main entrance to the college, and is haunted by the ghost of a little girl named Priscilla. When the building was a private residence, the little girl lived there and stayed around after dying from rabies. Maybe. Oh, you love that.
Oh, Britt, I wonder how she got rabies, Britt. Probably. What do we think? A bat? A rat?
No, yeah, absolutely
either those
not.
two.
A mangy possum.
Eating roadkill. All right.
Okay, maybe it's because that's a horrible way to die, especially for a child, but she's still seen from time to time, both inside and outside in the yard. Second location is Norton Auditorium. I can't recall the year, but a worker, George, fell to his death off the scaffolding and has since stayed on the job. Third place is, and I'm going to mispronounce this, the Guillot, Guillot. Gouliot. Oh, that sounds all right. Gouliot University Center, also known as the Student Center. The current building was built on the site of an old women's dorms, where a distraught student hung herself. Sounds of a rope creaking and a woman crying are heard in the vicinity of the event. Fourth is Wesleyan Hall. This is the one I have personal experience with. The building, also known by students as quote-unquote the castle, as it has turrets and resembling one, was built in 1856 and was used by both Union and Confederate troops during the Civil War. The story goes that one of the generals had a young son with him. Another says it was actually the young drummer boy, but either way, he's known as Jeremiah. He's been seen late at night, and a rhythmic drumming is often heard around the building at night. As a geography major for a while, I had many of my favorite classes in this building and could be often found in the computer lab late in the evening. Growing up in haunted houses and being a ghost hunter myself, I was never scared, but a few times I did get thoroughly spooked. My favorite encounter wasn't involving Jeremiah, however, but an old Confederate officer. One night, not terribly late, but after dark, I was in the lab engrossed in a geo-caching blog I was involved in and hadn't realized I was probably the last one there. I heard a deep cough and thought it sounded like my favorite geography professor, so I went to see what he was up to, as I thoroughly enjoyed talking with him, especially about our shared love of caching. I stepped out into the hall and, not seeing him, proceeded to head toward his office when I heard a deep voice say, plain as day, "And just why is any decent young lass here at this God-forsaken hour?" I didn't recognize his voice and turned to see who it was, only to find a tall man in Confederate garb. Now, I've always loved the Ethan Embry's line in Sweet Home Alabama about how we in the South love commemorating everything with reenactments, as it's pretty spot on. So while I was startled at first, I then realized he must be part of some local reenactment with one of the other professors there. I started to say that I didn't know that there was anything going on this late when, without warning, he just disappeared. He didn't slowly fade away or anything like you see in movies. He just was there 1 second and gone the next. I quickly gathered up my belongings and booked it out of there. One of my other experiences involving a school happened in 1997. I was working as a supported living specialist in Franklin, Tennessee. I lived with 2 mentally challenged clients through the week with every second weekend off. I would leave Friday evening and go to my parents' house for the weekend, returning late Sunday. During the day, my guys went to a day center, so more often than not, I would end up sticking around the apartment for several hours after I was officially off duty, so I could see them before I left. It would confuse them to come home and not find me there, so I just didn't feel right if I didn't tell them bye, since I really loved them. Just south of downtown Old Franklin is a little community called Thompson Station. Since Franklin is about an hour and a half from my hometown, it often meant I would be passing through this area at dusk or night. At that time, at the crossroads of Highway 31 and Thompson Station Road was an old abandoned schoolhouse. It was incredibly creepy and would have fit into any horror movie perfectly. One Friday night, I'd stayed at the apartment longer than usual to have dinner with my guys, so it was fully dark as I drove through the area. I had just recently met my future husband, and he'd told me how creepy he thought the old schoolhouse was, and how he'd always had the eeriest feeling if he was driving through at night. This is why I found myself paying closer attention as I drove by this night in particular, but I honestly wasn't expecting to feel much less see anything. I'd nearly driven completely past the building when I caught a glimpse of what I first thought was fluttering curtains, but realized quickly it was a woman in a pale colored dress. She was looking out the last window of the top floor, just standing there, her sleeves slightly moving as if being caught by a breeze. It really gave me the shivers, and I couldn't wait to tell my new beau. The very next day, I told him what I'd seen, and to my surprise, he suggested that we ride up there and check it out. He lived in Columbia, just south of St. Thomas's Station, so I drove up and met him when we got off work that afternoon. What we found was a completely boarded-up building with a chained and padlocked front door. The windows on the ground floor were boarded over, but not the ones on the top where I'd seen the woman. Furthermore, those windows still had glass in them, so how had I seen the dress moving when there couldn't have been a breeze? I know it may have been that she moved, but I remember her standing so still But it's the one tiny detail about the whole thing that's always bugged me. As we moved around the building, it didn't take long to see that there was no way anyone was getting into that building. So who or what had I seen? And how was her dress moving?
Okay.
There you have it. Two haunted. The end. It's 2 haunted schools. I don't think we caught the name of the abandoned school.
I don't think
Tennessee.
So.
But University of North Alabama.
I love the Confederate ghost stories. I don't know why, like the Civil War ghosts just seem so prevalent too.
Yes.
Right? Like, is it maybe because it was such a tragic war that happened on our soil that was local, and maybe like ghosts expire after a while? Their like presence is real strong for a while and then it slowly fades away, so we're still in that fresh past 200 years like ghosty.
Which is why we're like a lot of people still see the soldiers.
Yeah, versus like we don't see dinosaur ghosts because they've expired already. They're just not around
Their
anymore.
ghost time has expired.
Exactly. Missed.
I think there does have something to do with like quick death, tragic, intense deaths. Those tend to show more on the spirit side of things, as we have learned on this podcast.
I mean, I don't know if the dinosaurs saw that asteroid coming, Brett.
True. Good
Bam.
point. Why don't
No,
we
I
see
don't
ghost
know.
dinosaurs?
I don't know.
I'd never thought about it.
But it makes me want, like, I feel like if I go somewhere where the Confederate War was being played out, like, you have a much more higher likelihood of seeing a ghost. I stayed at a place in Fredericksburg, Virginia for a wedding several years ago now. And that place scared the shit out of me. It was a bed and breakfast, and I was really terrified of that place. I expected, sure, like a ghost to come through the wall at any minute. And yeah, him like a Confederate soldier like shaming a woman for being out and about sounds right up the alley. I thought I had boring habits until this person said they were engrossed in a geo-caching blog, making me feel a little better about myself. I have someone who works for the Forest Service that calls it geo-trashing because they always get like strewn about. It's fun when you have little kids and you want to go out and find like treasure.
Have you gone caching before?
Yeah, I've done it. Have you done it?
No.
They're all over. Like you can just look and then use your little GPS
like
and you
app.
go find it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I didn't like I don't know what you would like get engrossed with like necessarily. It's like you just find this little thing with little plastic tchotchkes in it, and there's not real treasure, and just like they end up breaking open and getting trash all over, and that's why they call them
geo-trashing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But and then to go back and investigate a roadside haunting, if there is a ghost chilling there, are they seeing like their old surroundings, like in that one movie that you made me watch that scared the shit out of me called The Others? Spoiler. Like where you think you're still in the past and think you're in your time and you're surrounded by all of your earthly possessions at that time. But really, if someone sees you, you're just hanging out in an old beat up abandoned building.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope I can have that sounds better to be.
I would rather
furniture.
that option than be a ghost trapped in an old dank abandoned schoolhouse. And I'm like, damn, this life sucks. Let me longingly look out the window because my life is horrible.
Yeah. Or like that show that we like too, Ghosts, where like they have to like she's got to put on the TV for them and stuff. And they're like, I love that one. And then there's the caveman ghost in there too, which is like, why don't we see more cavemen ghosts?
Exactly.
Another point with the dinosaurs and the cavemen. They must have gotten recycled by now.
That show is a delight. I recommend that one.
Oh my God, that one is HBO. Really, really good. Okay, do you want my other stories?
Always and forever, yes.
This one is from Ranker. And it's called The Indescribable Scream. And it was from an article of like the most haunted experiences in a school, relating to schools. It was like a call for stories, apparently. So people wrote in with their most terrifying experiences involving schools. So this one's called The Indescribable Scream. I'm going to preface this by saying I went to boarding school for 6 years. This boarding school was in the middle of a one-stoplight town and on a hill 800 feet up. The school used to be an old monastery. It was hundreds of years old and huge, with 4 stories, including a basement, where there was a boiler room and long hallways. Not all of these stories happened to myself, but the people who told me them were reliable enough to believe. Also, the school didn't want us telling stories to other people because they were afraid that it would make them not want to go to the school due to it being haunted. The first one happened to me. I used to be in charge of cleaning the gymnasium at night. Every student had a job that they had to do either at night or in the morning to help take care of the school. It taught you some practical things and all. Anyway, I was there by myself that night, getting ready to start sweeping the gym. The gym had 2 floors to it. The upstairs part was the weightlifting area, and you could see it fully from the bottom part of the gym where the basketball court was. As I stepped into the gym, one of the basketballs started rolling a bit. I looked around to see if any doors are open. None are. I chalk it up to randomness, but see that it is continuing to roll. As I watch, it makes a full circle around the entire gym and stops right next to my feet. At this point, I'm a bit scared, but figured it was nothing. I heard a creaking coming from the second floor and look up. There's a girl there just staring right at me. As soon as I make direct eye contact with her, she bolts to the stairs that would take her to me. She let out a scream that I cannot describe. I was terrified and froze in place. Thankfully, she didn't come to me, but took a left and bolted through the main doors of the gym. They didn't open. She just went straight through them. I noped the hell out of there.
Oh my God. So this ghost girl is staring at them, bolts down the stairs screaming, and then just flies through the, like
a horrible, terrifying scream.
This is like the others also. Like, she probably thinks that he's some kind of ghost,
that's
right?
a good point.
And she's like, what the hell is this?
Oh my God. I think, yes. Solved.
She was way more scared than that person.
She was, because she didn't run at him. Of course, I would think
she ran away.
Yeah, she's like, get me out of here.
A ghost scared of a human.
100%. Okay, apparently there's no other stories from that person. I think Ranker or whatever edited it. Sorry, that was the only one. She's like, there are many stories. I'm only going to tell you this one. Okay,
well, that's a good one. I love it. And then the basketball moving. I would have left immediately. I would not have waited for it to circle the entire gym and roll to me. I would have just been like, oh, halfway through the gym, ghost ball? Goodbye.
I think I get mildly fascinated by those sorts of things when balls and stuff do things that's like, oh, weird. Oh, why? But I'll be like, is the floor slanting that way? This and that. I might have been on the same page as him. I might have been creeped out because it was the middle of the night and where the fuck is this ball rolling from? So maybe not.
I forgot it was the middle of the night.
Yeah,
even.
and there's nobody there.
Worse.
But then to see the girl and then to scream, oh, fuck no. And I probably wouldn't ever clean again. I would change my duty. Okay, but I do have another story, not from this same person, not from the same place, but this one is called The Child Outcast. I used to work for my dad, who was partially self-employed, doing regular maintenance and floor refinishing for a child care program called Head Start. The one center was in an old school, which was built not too long after the turn of the century, and it served as a church function building in addition to housing Head Start and another child care. We always did floors over the summer. Anyone who has stripped and waxed floors knows that when you're putting the coating back on, it's quiet and relaxing. We were the only people in the building since it was a midsummer weekend, and yet it felt off. Even before you enter, like someone was watching from the second floor windows. So here we are making slow progress across this huge room when we hear a sound upstairs and stop. Then it sounded like someone was skipping across the room and back a few times, and then it stopped again. So we finished the layer and went upstairs. Nobody was up there. So we closed the doors and went downstairs to start the other room. Once again, this sound started, but this time I sprinted upstairs. The sound stopped before I reached the hall, but all the doors were open at various angles. We didn't hear the sound anymore that summer, but my dad asked the child care advisor from the other end of the building if they heard weird noises. She said no, but that one day they were sitting down for snacks and a couple of kids were staring in the corner. The aide asked them what they were looking at, and one of the girls asks, "Why can't that girl eat with us?" The aide looked down, then asked, "What girl?" And the kid points at the corner and says, "The little girl in the white dress." I literally haven't set foot in that building since and have no desire to do so. I used to think ghosts were for scary stories, but I have trouble believing this one isn't real.
Oh, that's great. Oh.
Yes. Ghost
What
in the
little
corner,
girl?
staring,
Yes.
creepy ghost kids. I love those stories, but I hate them. I don't ever want to experience it myself, but it's like my favorite form of horror. I might just start doing that to people. Like just in random places, be like,
Stand in the corner and stare at people.
Oh, I could do
no,
that.
You stare in the corner. Oh, yeah, that would make more
why
sense.
is there a girl in the corner staring at you, whispering your name?
Why can't she join us
Yeah,
at
what
this meal?
is that? Your daughter over there? I don't. She seems to know your name.
I love it.
That'd
Do
be
it,
a
do
good
it.
way to get out of a date if you're like really uncomfortable too. I don't know if they're delightful, but I like wanted to find something that was that one scene in the what was the show, the movie? I
Sixth
see
Sense?
dead. No, I see dead people.
Sixth Sense.
Oh, Sixth
With the
Sense.
hanging-
I thought you said Fixin'. I was like, that was it.
Sixth
Yes,
Sense.
the hanging
And they're
people
hanging.
in
I
the
was
school.
literally just thinking about that. Yeah,
I feel like I want to know that story, and they never go into it. I've
yes,
unresolved.
Yes, they only give like I want to know that story.
That
Yes,
is the
agreed.
story I want to know. So if anyone knows the story of the hanging people in that movie,
Fictional
Sense,
stories.
please write in. You can send it to our hotbox at skeletalespodcast@gmail.com, or you can call our hotline.
We know you have some haunted schools that you want to share with us. Call it to us. God, that is not words.
Close.
Call us and tell us at 302-689-DEAD. 302-689-3323. We have a spiffy new YouTube channel. Go head over there, Skeletales Pod. We have some never before videos over there that we're calling our after parties, where we get to talk with our Skeletalk guests, and sometimes just we have extra stories that Alyssa and I like to share over there. So
It does
you get to
happen.
watch us share stories over there. What else do we have, Alyssa?
We have social media websites and accounts you can come visit and follow. On Instagram, we're Skeletales Podcast. Like Britt said, YouTube, Facebook community, our Skeletales community over there. We're all the places. You can just Google us, find us, follow us. Please write a review. I didn't check to see if anyone wrote one since my last petition for reviews, but we'd love
They
one.
definitely help us get on the charts over there.
Yeah, tell a friend. If we want to hear your stories, we love reading our listeners' stories and our listeners'
100%.
experiences, family stories. I want to hear the ghost stories that you grew up hearing. Like,
Yes.
I live for that. If it involves a creepy kid in the corner, even better.
Even if it's an urban legend you heard as a
Yeah.
kid. Anything. We love it.
Yeah, what's the local rumor that you heard? Like I grew up with the freaking Erie Canal. Kids got stuck in cow skeletons at the bottom of it, or like
Yes.
anything like that. I like hearing those sorts of things too.
We also have some funky, fun, haunted merch over at skeletalespodcast.etsy. You can support the show that way and also head home with some fun garb.
Yeah, someone's got to buy the creepy haunted doll before it crawls
Oh
off
my
Britt's
God.
shelf fully and strangles her.
Staring at me right now. I literally had to take it and face it towards the wall because it was looking at me so intently.
I really want to, if it's going to attack, please do it during the podcast so I can watch it happen and we're recording. Please, little doll, you hear me? I'm going to do my psychic
No!
abilities now. I'm kineticking,
She can't hear you. I'm wearing headphones.
jumping on your face. Jump on Britt's face.
Stop.
Pull
Somebody
her
buy
hair.
Oh, mercy.
Okay, well, if that happens, I made that happen with my kinetic
I'll
abilities, my
keep you
Jedi
posted.
forces. Okay.
I'll keep you posted for that middle of the night doll attack that's coming.
No, middle of the podcast. It's going to be live on the podcast.
Yeah,
That's what's going to happen.
one.
She's going to take over. My new show host, Britt. Or you slowly, my imagination is real on fire today. Or you slowly turn into the doll. You start getting real pale and white.
My eyes just get darker and darker.
And then you only blink when you're laying down.
And then you'll wake up in the middle of the night and my pasty white face will be right next to you. And I'll go, Alyssa,
you asked for
haunt
this.
y'all later.
Haunt you later.
Good night.
Good night.